Hey guys, we are moving forward with the Diamond Select Real Ghostbusters figures. Today we're taking a look at two figures. We've already taken a look at Slimer, so of course there are two more that are out right now. We have got Egon and we have got Winston here. So we've got two figures to take a look at today. I figured we'd look at them both just because they're very, very similar. No reason to do two separate reviews for basically repaints with different heads. So we've got them here in the standard style Diamond Select boxes, the humongous boxes, which I don't personally care for, but they definitely fit the theme of what they've been going with for a long time now, not to mention the fact they've got big dial pieces back there, so they do need the real estate. You can see we've got Egon and Winston here in the big window. We've got the Real Ghostbusters logo on the side. We've got product shots for these guys on the side panel of the box, and then the back has a bit of a bio, as well as a shot of the current wave with the Firehouse Dio down there as well. So let's pull them out and take a look. Alright guys, here we go. We've got our Ghostbusters figures out of the package. Figures that I've really been looking forward to, and figures that I think have ultimately let me down a little bit. I don't buy a ton of Diamond Select stuff, and honestly these figures are not helping in that regard. I got a lot of paint QC issues here. I've got some questions about why certain accessories are the way they are. And we have a humongous QC issue with my Winston figure because the wand on the Proton Pack was broken in the package, so it does not connect to the actual pack itself. The cable snapped off at the wand at the tip, and it can't go back on. It doesn't peg in, so I'm gonna have to drill that out or something and fish out the piece that's in there and then shove this back in, because I can't just plug it in because there is a piece of tubing already in there. So yeah, that's a bit of a bummer to say the least. We are still going to do this review. I'm going to take a look at the figures as far as what they look like and all that good stuff. We're going to do articulation first. I'm just going to use one of them. We'll use Egon, since he does have the wand, and that does kind of play into how you want to use his articulation. So we're going to move Winston aside, take a look at Egon first. Now, as far as moving these guys around, they are decently articulated. I'm not going to say that they have anything crazy going on, except for the fact that they have got some really weird hips. But I believe that they are, at least in most ways, retools or reuses of the old Ghostbusters figures that Diamond has already done from the movies. I don't think these are new. Someone let me know if I'm wrong. Again, this is not my thing. This is just a line that I had to get into because I wanted this particular version of the Ghostbusters. So they have decent articulation, but again, it's nothing really groundbreaking. And if anything, I find it to be a little limiting. So we've got heads that can go backwards and forwards. Everything is really, really tight on these guys too. Left and right, rotation, a little bit of bobble there. You can get him to hold the Proton Pack, the wand, pretty well. It's not the greatest. They have rather limited arms, all things considered. So you can get a dude nice two-hand pose. Of course, he can hold it in his right hand just fine. Let's pop that out for a second. Arms go out. They rotate. The shoulder region's pretty good. That feels very nice, actually. You've got a hinge, which is not really even 90 at the elbow, and then rotation. And then you've got hinged and rotating wrists. They do have an upper diaphragm cut. It's just a swivel. There's not really a lot of movement back and forth. I mean, it does move forward. It doesn't move backwards just because of the Proton Pack. It really, really doesn't want to do that. But you can help with your crunch a little bit, and then you've got a waist twist down here as well. So we've got these weird hips too. So you've got outward movement that way, and then they kick forward and they kick back. But look at that joint in there. It's really weird. That's odd. I'm not sure I've ever seen anything like that. It works. It's just kind of unsightly. This cut right here doesn't look very good. Thigh cut, double jointed knees. They go pretty far back. I'd say more than enough for a Ghostbuster. And then there is nothing as far as rotation because it's double joint. There's no rotation at the boot, but you do have a rocker and you've got a hinge. So it's pretty decently articulated. I wouldn't say he's hyper articulated or anything, but it's well enough. I just think that if, in general, the one area that they're really lacking is arms. I would have liked to have seen double jointed elbows on these guys. It just would have helped to be able to get them into more dynamic poses with the Proton Packs with the wands. Otherwise, it's okay, outside of the fact that the hips are just kind of wonky. But they're functional, just wonky looking. Now, as far as the overall look and feel of these guys, I think that in a general sense, Diamond Select's done a pretty good job with these. The heads are really where it's at. I think the heads are just about fantastic. They aren't 100% perfect because the paint on these guys is just kind of goopy and it's kind of sloppy just in a lot of different ways. But the overall sculpt on the heads, I think, is fantastic. We'll get tighter in on those in a second. But overall, the bodies are okay. They have, the same suits. They're the exact same figure. Of course, they do share different heads, and then they've got different color skin tones just because, of course, the different characters. But we do have, different color suits that they have. So Egon's got a darker kind of teal color. Winston's got kind of a light blue, and then they have different accents, so kind of the maroon versus the brown. But overall, the sculpt looks good. I think it works pretty well. Of course, I don't think they work in a sense that they're not really in scale. They should be different sizes. Egon should be a little taller. You know, Ray should be, what, a little fatter and shorter as far as these guys go once we get him. Of course, they're all going to be the exact same size, so that's definitely a thing. It's not a huge deal for me. It's not going to really, you know, put me up in arms or anything, but it's definitely something that I kind of thought about and realized. But what's really a problem with these figures is that the paint QC is just all over the place with these figures. So I'm going to look at each one individually because they share some issues, but they have different problems in just a lot of different ways. Like paint's just kind of all over the place. So, you know, from far back, I think they look really, really good. When you get in on those heads, I think they look really good. But when you start to examine their suits, things are kind of eh. So we're going to look at Egon first. So as far as Egon's overall look, I'm pretty happy with it. I think he's my favorite of the two. He's my favorite of the real Ghostbusters anyway, so, you know, I'm kind of biased there. We do have the Ghostbusters logo tampoed on the right arm. I think it looks really good. It's pretty solid. I don't really have any issues there. But we've just got little paint things here and there, far more than I would have expected to find. They're not as bad on this figure as they are on Winston. He, for some reason, got the brunt of it, for sure. But we've got, like, it's hard to see, but there's, like, a little bit of black on the pants down here. And in general, like the cuffs, you can see the teal kind of bleeding through because these are painted over. Same on the collar. There's teal that comes through that instead of just being that kind of red, maroon, pinky kind of color. So a lot of little things like that. Bleeding on the buckles on the straps here, that runs down. There's just a lot of stuff like that is really, really noticeable once you start to actually examine them. I do think from a sculpt perspective, he looks really solid. I'm really happy with the overall look, you know, in just his sculpt department. I do like the fact that the elbow pads are movable, so you can rotate them around as you rotate the arm to kind of help with hiding the joint. And it is hidden pretty well, all things considered. It's despite the fact that it's not the best joint, you don't really see a lot of it, which I do appreciate. We do have the proton pack, so it's a tube that runs from the pack to the wand, and I think in general that everything here is sculpted pretty nicely. It looks good. I like the colors on it. There's a lot of paint apps on this thing, and there's a lot of paint apps on the proton pack as well. All the gauges, the cluster of instruments. You've got the tanks, the wiring, the tubing. All of it's pretty nicely done. You know, it very much has that cartoony look and feel. What I don't like is that I recall these figures being shown off at a show with the proton packs taken off. I suppose they are removable in the sense that you could take the figure apart and take it off, but you cannot just take it off. It's a part of the figure unless you start popping pieces off. So you have to take the arms off, and you might even have to take the torso out just because of how it's centered on here. So all of these pieces are movable. They aren't attached to the figure. They very much are just here, but it's just a tight fit, so you can't really take it off unless you start disassembling the figure. Does that matter to me in my display? Not really, no. But I just remember it being a thing. I remember it being shown that way, so I kind of assumed that you could do it, and then turns out you can't. It's not a huge thing. I'm sure someone might find that to be a real problem. I just figured it was at the very least worth mentioning. Now, as far as Egon's head sculpt, this is why he's my favorite for the most part in terms of looks. I love his ridiculous hair. I think it's fantastic. I think they did a really, really good job on the sculpt for this hair. There's a lot more detail in it than there probably should be as far as them being cartoony in nature, but I'm not really concerned about that. I think it just works really, really nicely. The one area where his face is kind of wonky is an area which is usually pretty difficult anyway, and that's the glasses. They aren't perfect. You know, it's kind of hard to see his eyes through those. They look a little on the small side, but at the same time, it doesn't really bother me. It's just like, you know, take a look at them. They're kind of weird, but from other angles, they look pretty good. They're a separate piece. They're just attached. They're glued to the sides of his head, so, you know, I wouldn't try pulling them off, at least not too hard. But I do think in general, the faces look pretty solid. I'm pretty happy with it. I don't really have any actual complaints, just more kind of nitpicky stuff. But I think the hair is really what does it for me. I think they did a fantastic job. It's got maybe too much detail, but I don't really care. If anything, I think it makes the figure look even better despite the fact that he is supposed to be a cartoony guy, and I think it works really, really well. All right, the problem child of the bunch here. So Winston he's the same figure as Egon. You know, it's the exact same stuff. He's just got different paint schemes. So like I said, he's got the lighter color jumpsuit. He has got brown accents instead of the maroon type of accents. So like his collar and his cuffs, and they work a lot better. They don't have as much bleed through as Egon's color, rather. What he does have though is definite paint issues. So I've got a big splotch of brown on his suit here, and what's really interesting is that where this figure was positioned in the packaging, the paint is on the tray in the packaging. This guy, as far as I can tell, and it makes no sense to me, was put in the tray with wet paint on him. There's no way that it would have gotten there. It definitely didn't rub off. It's just there's too much paint for that to have been a thing. So that's really, really weird, very odd, at least at the same time. So that's a bit concerning. He has brown paint right back here, which is definitely really odd. I don't know why that would have been back there. There was certainly nothing in the package to have rubbed off. It certainly looks like a brush stroke. He's got a lot of silvery goop all over this yellow canister on his back. I've been able to flake some of it off just to see what it was, and it certainly looks like it's paint from this tube. How that could have possibly been put on there like that, I have no idea, but it's really, really weird. He just has a lot of odd little QC issues in the paint department that are just more noticeable than Egon. Egon's stuff is really minuscule in the grand scheme of things. This guy is just jacked up. There's really no way to describe it. Paint's a mess all over his body, and then of course I have a broken piece. Otherwise, I think he looks okay. You know, all the same details. He's got the same fantastic pack and wand as far as the design goes. Paint apps are mostly okay outside of that, but he just has a lot of glaring problems, which frankly are a huge bummer. Now, as far as Winston's face goes, he is pretty solid. I do think that the paint is still a little on the goopy side. It just looks... That's the best way to describe it. It just looks kind of goopy. It's really weird. Otherwise, I think the sculpt is on point. The hair is fantastic. Facial features are really nicely done. Eyes are really crisp and clear and straight. There's not as much to talk about with Winston as there is with Egon, just because, you know, he has a more natural type of hairstyle. He doesn't have, you know, like an ice cream cone kind of hairstyle on the top of his head. He does have a little bleeding of black paint onto the skin tone, which is a bit of a bummer. Again, this is kind of his thing. If there's going to be a problem right now, it's going to be him. But overall, I think the look is there. And like I said originally, these guys excel in terms of the looks from the face. That's really what sells me on the cartoon aspect of him. And I think overall he does work really, really well. He just isn't, as we've understood at this point, perfect. Alright, now as far as accessories goes, we've reached another bit of a problem, because as I've been going through the accessories now, I've realized that we have more QC problems, more defects, and more broken pieces with these figures. So to say that I have reached kind of, I don't know, just my limit with these figures is a bit of an understatement. So I'll start with the stuff that isn't broken. So each figure comes with 4 extra hands. So they've got these gloved hands. You've got hands that have kind of a closed grip on them, which is different from what they have if they're flesh tone hands. So we got those. And then we've got gloved hands that match their flesh tone hands, which are more of an open but still gripping hands. What I find interesting is that I don't really remember these guys wearing gloves in the cartoons much, if at all. I always thought they were barehanded, so I'm assuming these are from other figures and they just kind of threw them in. They probably did wear gloves at some point, I just don't remember it. Frankly, I have no reason to swap those out, I don't think. They both come with traps, and they come with this wire, or bent up, kind of wrapped around it. I don't know if this is a bendy wire or not. It really doesn't want to stay. The details on it are pretty nice. I like it. Looks good. I'm just worried that this is going to be another place that's going to break, because all of them, they're bent at a 90-degree angle at the top here to kind of twist them around just to get them packaged. But it's not a bendy wire. It certainly doesn't seem like it is anyway. It doesn't want to retain any shape. It goes right back to being curled up, which on its own is a problem, because I don't want this thing to be curled up like this. So you've got that. They both have PKE meters, which have pretty good detail on them. Paint is a little sloppy in some ways. It's not too bad. Certainly not worth really crying about or anything. But they look pretty good. They can hold this just fine in either hand. But the biggest and most interesting part of their accessory packages, outside of the fact that I'm not counting the proton packs as accessories, because frankly they're attached to the bodies sort of, so they are not accessories to me. So we've got effect pieces. So they've got, let me get them in the right side here. So we got Egons and we've got Winstons. And these look pretty cool. I really, really like these. It's just, you know, a plastic tube that's kind of, you know, formed into a bit of a wave. And then it's got the kind of electricity that goes through it. I think these are really, really cool. I was really excited for these, and they fit over the top of the end of the wand here. And they have this little nub. that fits over top, this little plastic piece. And I'm not supposed to be holding this on its own. This should be attached to this piece. They were both broken off in the package. So I can't even use their accessories right now. I can't have Winston hold his wand without it looking ridiculous. I can't have their effect pieces on there. We've got this mess of a wire that I just don't think is correct at all. So yeah, they have accessories, but they are an absolute nightmare as far as my figures go. So at the end of the day, these two figures, at least my two figures, mind you, are a tremendous letdown. I am very disappointed in the QC on these figures. It could not have been much worse outside of the fact that the figures themselves are structurally okay. Paint is a mess. Accessories are a mess. It's just an interesting mess of problems here. I don't understand what in the world happened for my figures to both have been this bad. Obviously, my Winston is worse off because his proton pack is broken, his effect piece is broken, his paint is sloppy. Winston is definitely the worst of the two. Egon, I think, looks really good, but he still has paint problems. He has a broken accessory piece, and it's just all really unfortunate because I was very much looking forward to this. Of course, I'm going to try to fix these pieces without having to resort to trying to replace them or anything like that, or calling customer service or anything like that. But it's still a bummer, no matter how I can describe it. This is not the toy experience I was looking for out of these figures. So while I was really excited for these, they have been a humongous letdown for me at the end of the day. So that's going to do it for this look at the Real Ghostbusters Egon and Winston figures from Diamond Select. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And until next time.